Yeah, so it was a lengthy discussion that we had at the beginning of the pandemic, arriving in Switzerland, and we decided that we had to establish a framework in order to decide, okay, where we will intervene and how we will intervene, and who could be at the most vulnerable. So we didn't know, like everybody else, what will be the risk, what will be the contamination, etc. And we took for granted that already extremely vulnerable population in our project would probably be hit even more hardly. So based on this assumption, we decided that people that were living in really crowded places, refugee camp, displaced camp, etc., will be our priority in terms of preparedness for COVID. So it's like this that we establish, like, for example, population in the border with Mexico, the migrant in Greece, the refugee in Tanzania or in Kenya, were target group for which we had to really get prepared, because if COVID would happen, it will really hardly hit those populations already vulnerable. Finally, we realized with time, we didn't know at that time, that this scenario didn't happen. So we had to readapt our approach and our decision making, and based on what the field team were bringing us and saying, okay, now COVID is there, it's really happening in the project where we are, so we need to scale up. And it's like this that we decided, for example, in Sudan to intervene in Khartoum, because it was really a massive amount of COVID cases reported, and no capacity and request from the Ministry of Health for support, and we decided to intervene on a vertical approach in Khartoum. We did the same, for example, in Dakar, where we were faced with as well increased number of COVID cases, and they were really lacking expertise in terms of IPC, infection prevention and control. So we supported them on that aspect. So despite the fact that at the beginning we say we will focus on the population that are highly vulnerable, living in crowded situation, finally we didn't see major outbreak of COVID in those populations, and COVID finally hit more severely other places that we didn't anticipate. So with COVID, what we had to learn, it's you have to adapt, and you have to, it's not because you take a decision today that it will apply for all your context tomorrow. You really need to be extremely sensitive to the evolution where you are operating, and really adapt and decide on case by case based on the specificity of the context. So, how long this pandemic will last? In theory, this pandemic will last as long as there is not a herd immunity. So I don't have a crystal ball, but with what we are seeing today, with the second wave happening everywhere, we can sincerely expect and believe that it will not stop like this from one day to the other day, and that it's something that we will have to consider in the general panorama for weeks, for months, and probably for years. So for us, as MSF today, we are clearly thinking of COVID as a new disease that we have to address like any other one. Of course, adapt our way of working in order to not spread this disease more than it will naturally spread. But it's a disease that needs to be integrated in any kind of package of care, like any other disease. It's a new communicable disease that we need to monitor, to follow up, to surveillance, and to integrate in our consultation room. So how long it will last? Honestly, I don't. It didn't stop during the summer. It didn't stop in hot country. It didn't stop in cold country. And we can see today that with cold weather, with the fact that people are much less outside and have to stay inside due to the cold, etc., yes, it will continue. It will continue, and it's true that there is absolutely no visibility today for when it will stop. So it will stop, like I was saying, when the viruses will not be able to jump from one person to the other person and will die by himself. But for the moment, he still have a lot of persons that are not infected that he can infect. So it will continue. Yeah, so on that as well, we really defined from the beginning that the first priority was to make sure that the staff would be safe from COVID and protected. So meaning having all the preventive and protective measures in order to be able to continue medical services without taking risks for themselves. The second priority was, of course, to avoid that by the organization of our services, we were creating a contamination inside our consultation room. So the second priority was really to implement infection control measures in all the projects that we have as a minimum, as a baseline of adaptation of all the services that we were doing in order to avoid being a risk for patients coming to a health facility to get the COVID inside the health facility. So first one was really protecting the staff, making sure that they had enough materials to be protecting, mask, gown, goggle, etc. Second of all, organize all the health facility in order to make sure that we were not a source, a nest for contamination for patients, that they could come for any kind of medical problem and they will not go out of the health infrastructure with a contamination with COVID. So that was really the two first priority. And after, of course, the third priority was to make sure to maintain as much as possible all the services that we were providing. Because yes, COVID is killing, but it's not the only disease which is killing. There is malaria. If malaria is not well treated properly on time, it's killing very much more than COVID is killing, for example, today in Africa. We had measles, we had severe illnesses for which we were really prioritizing that all life-saving activity could continue despite COVID. So that was really a little bit the three pillars that we were really looking for, and it's still what we are looking for today. Yeah, so for me, what has been really interesting with this COVID pandemic is that for once, we were all at the same level. So meaning not knowing how it will evolve, not knowing what was the treatment to be done, not knowing what will be the scale of the epidemic. So in fact, it really created an equal to equal relationship between medical professionals in all the mission where we were. We were really reflecting together on, okay, how do we get prepared? What do we implement? How do we get organized? Based on the specificity of each context. So based on the logistics that was available, based on the testing that was available or not, especially at the beginning, or based on the protective materials that were available. And really, it has been a work where synergies between the different actors, Ministry of Health, MSF, but other organizations, United Nations organization, we all work together to make sure that we were using at the best the limited resources that we have for the best benefit of the population. And for me, it's pretty unique in terms of relationship, because often when we arrive, we arrive with the knowledge, and we try to demonstrate that we have the knowledge about something and that we want to change the policy of a country whatsoever. In this case, with COVID, it was, okay, nobody knows anything, so let's see how we get organized in order to do the best, and it was really a partnership. And it's key, because I do think it will have an influence on how we work now for the future, because we have seen that we were all equal, trying to do the best with what we had. And for me, it's probably a change in the way we will continue to work. So I would say that the contribution of MSF has been pretty different. I will explain with two different contexts. So the MSF response in what I will call the Western world has been pretty interesting, because in fact what we realize is that in the Western world, what is massive epidemic management, public health management of communicable disease, etc., has been lost. And in fact, we were really bringing an expertise of massive outbreak management in terms of infection control, in terms of patient flow, in terms of organization of the health services, etc. And this has been really critical in most of the Western world, because in fact, we were pretty unique with this expertise available. In the country where we were operational before, in fact, our expertise has much more been in terms of we are used to manage epidemics, so as usual, Ministry of Health, partner, you can count on us. We will help you to address the wave of patients that we will receive. So, but it was much more a kind of traditional way of working in the country where we were already operational, while our expertise has been extremely key in the Western world, based on really this experience of a massive epidemic disease outbreak that were lost. So public health approach on a massive scale in Western world was lost. Things are, people are learning really fast, and we see it with the second wave. It's not at all the same request from the different partners in the Western world about our support. However, I do think that we have been instrumental on that. And secondly, in the country of operation, like in Africa, I do think that one of our key role has been, after several weeks, to say, okay, guys, we were getting prepared for COVID, but COVID is not killing like we were expecting it was killing. It would be killing. So now it's time to really redirect priority to the main disease that the population is facing, like measles, like malaria, because today, despite the fact that COVID is there, COVID is not killing, while measles, malaria is killing on daily basis. So I think as MSF, our role since few weeks now is really to push actors, to push partners, to push community to say, okay, not everything needs to be put in COVID. Because the vaccination program need to continue, malaria supply and treatment need to continue, because these things is more life-saving, are more life-saving than COVID in the moment of today. We don't say that it will perhaps be the case in 2 months, 3 months time, but in the day of today, we need to continue the general health care. We need to continue the preventive package of sexual and reproductive health for women. We need to continue safe abortion care. We need to continue malaria treatment. We need to continue general consultation, because that's save more life. And I do think that today, as MSF, it's really a message that we need to push more and more, because there is a lot of diversion of attention toward COVID, but the reality in most of our context, it's not COVID killing, it's other things. So that is a very good question. Today, there is a lot of vaccine under development, and we are speaking around 200 vaccines that are under development, and us in MSF, we believe that there is 11 serious candidates for future use. It's clear, in our opinion, that a vaccine will arrive soon in the market. However, what will be the quality of this vaccine, what will be its efficacy, what will be its easiness of of management, that is absolutely unclear. Because what we hear today, for example, the last information that we have is most of the vaccines that are under development, on these 11 vaccines that are serious candidates, it will require 2 doses injection. Some of them will require ultra cold chain management. So ultra cold chain management, you can forget about mass campaign vaccination because it's too complicated, at least in the context where we work. And it's clear as well that availability of vaccine will first of all be taken by the ones that have been injecting a lot of money in this vaccine maker in order to save, first of all, or to vaccinate, first of all, their own population. So once more, I do think that when the vaccine will arrive, it will be always the same one, the ones that have the means to purchase it, that will get priority. Which is really a pity, because if you want to control a pandemic, you need to vaccinate as much possible as people, and not only the ones that believe are entitled to receive the vaccine. So as MSF, what we advocate for, it's to make sure and to try to stimulate the different initiatives around the world, like the Accelerator Access Initiative for COVID tool, to make sure that there is a minimum of stock which is secure for humanitarian purposes, for emergency response. So that is one thing. And the second thing that we advocate as MSF is to make sure that we give priority all over the world for vaccination of health staff, because they are the one on first line, and we know that if they are getting sick, it's even further the system which is destabilized. So for us, it's clear that the key priority group in terms of vaccination, it's the health staff all over the world. And that is not only in the country where we intervene, but it's only in all the country, and we see US at the moment, we see India, we see these countries that are extremely affected, and that's a priority for vaccination. Vaccinate the health staff in order to protect the health system. So protect, of course, individual, but protect as well the health system that will take care of further sick people.